How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to TheBlueShifting. Welcome back to Higurashi when the Cry, Chapter 5. It's weird. As I'm getting started to make this video to record, it feels really quiet. Like, really quiet. Like, it's normal house. Everything's fine. Normal day, as far as I could tell. Normal people around. Normal pets around. Everything's normal. And yet, as I got ready to start this, everything feels quiet. I don't know if that should be a bad sign. I know things are probably going to get kicking off in here now, but I don't know why. I just suddenly got this really bad feeling in general. I'm hoping it's just, anticipation of like what I know is coming in the story, or at least how it's going to get real rough from here, but I don't know if that explains everything. So, yeah. Hope you're looking forward to today's episode. I'm looking forward to making it. Hope you enjoy, because like we did the storehouse thing, which is going to be the trigger of all the cascading events, and then like there's two things that I want to specifically remember. The first was that in one of the notebook sections that we read, the tip at the very end, it talked about how Tomataka-san like could have been taken away and burned or vanished. There could be a connection of how she could both be here at Watanagashi and be up in the mountains on time, but it would have meant that she would have had to been taken away basically immediately after. And if we trust the events that happened in Chapter 3, then somehow she gets involved with or is the reason why Tomataka-san dies, and then immediately gets taken away into the mountains. Like, all of these events had to happen like boom, 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 really fast. So it's just odd. I don't know what we're going to learn from that. And then the other thing that was interesting is people kind of helped clarify a little bit about how the banging noise inside the shrine, like, I knew that Keiichi didn't hear that. I thought he might have heard one of them, but it was the sound of Tomataka-san coming in that he heard. However, someone reminded me that Tomataka-san also heard the banging. And so that's interesting. So, yeah, I have no idea what to expect here, but I think it's time for us to jump in and get things, move things forward, make it happen, make it work its way. Oh my gosh, wait a second. Oh no, wait a minute. I just had a really weird thought. Okay. So hear me out. Remember how the end of Chapter 2 is really kind of confusing? Because apparently what happens at the end is Mion, like, gets, like, the police show up, and when they do, she tries to get away, and she falls down into the pit, and she dies, right? And they're like, oh, well, if we found her, she died. And then after Keiichi's, like, recovered, he sees her standing outside, goes out with the doll to say, I'm sorry, and gets stabbed and nearly dies. And then, that same night, they talked about how Shion, like, vanished from her room, and it was locked from the inside. But I just realized, like, why did I think of this before? I must have thought of this before, but it doesn't feel like the most obvious solution is that Mion dies, Shion has a terrible reaction to that death, and apparently decides to take revenge on Keiichi. And I think maybe I did think of that, but I was like, that seems so far-fetched. Why would she do that? But now we might know why. She was basically going crazy with the Satoshi vanishing and everything, and then losing her sister. Like, maybe she just snapped and said, like, I don't know. Maybe that would make a lot of sense if, like, the whole switching thing had just happened another time. And then who knows what about the specter that he saw in the hospital room, whether that was like a ghost or not, who knows. Anyway, I'm sorry. I feel like that should be something that should have been talked about before now, but for some reason it just kind of like floated back into my head. So I wonder if I'll be right about that. Anyway, let's jump in, because already way long of an intro. My relatives gathered at the Sonozaki house after the festival to have a little party. I mingled with my uncles and they had fun. I was trying to get rid of my eerie memories of the ritual storehouse. Mion was acting as a successor, so I tried to stay away from her. I'm sure she would feel weird if I talked to her in a formal way. In consideration of the hag's old age, we ended the party around 11 p.m. I like how, like, consideration of her old age is just, like, not going into, like, 4 in the morning. We all helped clean up, the women washing the dishes in the kitchen, and the men folding the tables and putting them away in the storeroom. It only took them about 30 minutes, and everyone left one after the another. By then, Mion was no longer acting as the Sonosaki's successor and was back to being her normal self. It's that duality that makes her go crazy, too. Is that she, like, lives in 2 spheres. Maybe I overexerted a little. I was lying on the tatami floor. Kasai asked me if I could get in the car. So I told him that I'd rather not move anymore.
One, 今日泊まってってもいい?
Aww.
ここで寝ちゃいたい。バッチャに見つかると怒られるよ。で、それよりシオン、明日は学校じゃないの？明日は開校記念日だからいいの。
Is that true or are you just saying that?
あんたの学校、開校記念日って年に何回あるわけ？
Yeah.
まあ、いっか。じゃあ、笠井さん。シオンは今夜はうちで預かります。
Aww.
わかりました。では、よろしくお願いいたします。
ほら、シオン、起きて。ここで寝てるとバッチャに怒られるって。ほら、肩を貸すから奥に行こう。私の布団貸してあげるから。ありりー、おねー。
Sometimes you just want to curl up and be lazy. It feels good. My alter ego told me that I'm in a demon's stomach. I wouldn't have woken up if I hadn't heard that voice, but when I stop, he always walks one extra step. I might not have woken up at all. My alter ego told me I'm in a demon's stomach. That's interesting. Boy, this night was so eventful. I didn't remember much after that. I was probably brought to Mion's room and immediately crawled onto the futon. After a while, Mion got her futon ready next to me, turned off the lights, and went to sleep. At least that's what I thought. I got up and turned the lights on. Mion's futon was empty. The futon felt cold. Mion must have left it a while ago. Did she go to the bathroom? No, the closet bathroom was right down the hallway. The closest bathroom, not the closet bathroom. The closest bathroom was right there down the hallway. The light in the bathroom was off. Where did she go? The ticking of the clock was loud and annoying in the silence. The hands pointed to a little before 3 a.m. I was left alone all of a sudden, in this late night. I felt the eeriness of the ritual storehouse coming back to me after almost managing to forget it in the ruckus earlier. I tried to sense my surroundings. In this house, there shouldn't be an eerie atmosphere, strange noises, or footsteps. I stepped into the freezing cold hallway to look for Mion. When I did, I immediately noticed a light coming from one of the nearby rooms. That room belonged to the hag. The hag went to sleep early and woke up early. She was very strict about her bedtime. So it was strange to see her light on in the middle of the night. I could hear voices, too. Those voices belonged to the hag and Mion. I crept up to the room and listened to their conversation. Since it was the middle of the night, I could hear the words very clearly.
しゃあもねえやんな。あんの赤いのもちょい出張りすぎやったんや。
Right.
まあね、お社様のお怒りに触れたんだから仕方ないしね。
Mion's voice sounded as cold as the one I'd heard down in the torture room. I held my breath.
警察は調べとっちゅうとろんが、すっとろん間違いなあかんね。
多分ね、高野さんだろうね。
Oh. My heart almost stopped. Oyashiro-sama got angry. The police are investigating. It's probably Takano-san. And what day was it? Those words were what told me something was happening. My teeth started to chatter. I desperately tried to stop them. I felt like my body was swelling up suddenly. I could no longer hear as well. Calm down. Breathe. Listen more carefully. According to Mion, the hag's conversation, another incident definitely took place. The victims were Takano-san and Toмотake-san. From what I could tell, both Mion and the hag thought it made sense that whatever it was happened to them. No. I need to think more calmly. They did say they deserved it for making Oyashiro-sama angry. Did they say Takano-san and Toмотake-san made Oyashiro-sama angry? How did they make Oyashiro-sama angry? They knew. My body started to shake. They knew we snuck into the ritual storehouse. Then what? That would mean Keiichi and I were also subject to Oyoshiro-sama's curse? Suddenly a phone rang. The phone was by the front door. The front door was opposite the hag's room further down the hall. The ringing echoed throughout the long hallway. It sounded eerie, almost like it was coming from hell. That was when I felt someone behind me. Of course, there was nobody there when I turned around, but there was someone there a moment ago. I didn't know if it was Satoshi-kun. I didn't sense any emotion, so I couldn't tell. I also didn't know how long it had been there. It was as if somebody was watching me listen in on their conversation. That was the feeling I got. It couldn't be Satoshi-kun. Satoshi-kun would never be that intimidating or scary. My mind turned all red like it was suffused with blood.
みーちゃんにはない？
Oh gosh.
ひたひたと。ずっと足音がついてきて、夜は枕元にまで立たれて、見下ろされる経
I clicked
験。
early, I'm sorry. I remembered what Ren and Ryugu said on that rainy day.
そうならばみーちゃんは大丈夫。お社様には怒られない。
If Oyoshiro-sama wasn't angry, nobody would follow me. So what did this mean? Ever since we'd snuck into the shrine storage, something had been following me? What is it? Calm down. Calm down. That's right, Rena wasn't talking about me. She was talking about Satoshi-kun. That's what happened to Satoshi-kun.
サトシ君が体験していることは、すべてお社様のたたりの前触れなの。
That's right. That's why he encountered the curse of Oyoshiro-sama.
誰かが遠くからじっと伺っている。誰かがずっとつけてくる。
A creepy feeling crawled up and spread across my back.
誰かがいつも自分のすぐ後ろから見ている。やがて足音は常に自分とずれて一つ余計に聞こえるようになるの。
The one thing that's really troubling about this, and like I have a feeling this chapter is gonna really try and throw the curse at me as an explanation. And I apologize for the ringing, but I gotta get this out. The one thing that's really got me going here is how consistent this curse manifests as. Like my current theory. Oh, I don't know how that happened. Being that it's like an actual like person following people, and they're really really good at it. I feel like that would be a lot more inconsistent if it were that. The fact it is so consistent is harder to just accept. It makes it sound more cursy because it's like, how is it always manifesting in a way that's like basically predictable with how consistent it is? I swallowed loudly. It's almost as though Ren and Ryugu was predicting what would happen to me. Had Ren been talking about Satoshi-kun back then? Or has she actually been talking about me?
やがて後ろのそれは自分の家の中にまでついてくるようになる。
But that could be a person, because the person like slowly gets more and more access to your life because they're able to like, you know, clone a key or find a window that tends to be unlocked or something.
そしてお布団に入って明かりを消してもずっと枕元から見下ろしてるの。ただただ黙ってじーっと。
I knew by now there was no mistake. No matter how I looked at it, she had been talking about me. Yeah, me. It had to be about me. The curse of Oyoshiro-sama? What was the curse of Oyoshiro-sama? That was when I actually felt something for real. Someone grabbed my collar. No voice came out. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was open and close my mouth as if something was stuck in my throat. It was Mion. Oh no. It's scary, Mion. We're cooked! We're cooked! She looked even colder than how she looked in the underground torture room. It only made sense that she'd come out in the hallway to answer the phone. I tried to come up with an excuse. However, the way Mion looked at me was so cold. Even if I really had run into her by accident, I could tell by the look in her eyes that she wouldn't believe me. I felt a cold sweat all over my body. I couldn't even move my fingers.
ごめん。
I apologized. I couldn't have said something to get myself out of the situation, but the apology came out first. But Mion didn't appear to hear me. She walked to the front door, still holding my collar. The phone was still ringing. A normal person doesn't usually let a phone ring so long at this time of night. The phone call itself didn't seem real to me. Mion picked up on the phone.
ミオンです。そうですか。わかりました。
So, again, like, it's almost like she has a different tone, a different way of speaking when she's like this. And it reminds me again of Rika. I always thought it was like her trying to be all like calculating, right? But then we get the eye thing, and it does seem like people talk like the slightly different people. That's really weird. If there is a curse, maybe this is a solid through line of where people will seem to speak differently, like they're older, like they have more experience, like an adult when they're children. Huh.
そちらの対応はよろしくお願いします。それから、一切の口封じをよろしくお願いします。ええ、では。
Mion put down the phone after a short conversation. What did she mean? Make sure nobody talks about this. Who called anyway? Mion put their forehead in mine and spoke to me. Oh my gosh.
聞いてた？
Holy crap. Look at that. That's terrifying. What conversation is she asking me about? Well, she had to be talking about the one with the hag. If I said yes, what would happen to me?
知ら、何のことかわかんない。
Mion pulled my collar and pressed her nose on pressed her nose on mine and continued to speak.
聞こえた通りです。富武さんと高野さんが本当にお気の毒なことです。
Oh my gosh, she's talking like Oryou. It was like I was talking to myself in a mirror. But what I said in the mirror was ever so cold.
おね、お社様のたたりって何です？富武さんは自らの手で喉をかきむしってお亡くなりになりました。高野さんは遠くの山奥でドラム缶に詰められて焼き殺されたそうです。
Interesting. Because before, the idea that Tomitaka-san killed himself, like, definitely kind of got out, but Takano being burned to death in an oil drum was very speculative knowledge. But she knows it.
実にお気の毒です。
Tomitaka-san clawed out his own throat until he died? What? Takano-san was burned to death in an oil drum? What? What? I felt something furry crawl up my spine. I also felt like my stomach was turning inside out. Or upside down. Didn't feel any strength in my legs. If Mion let go of my collar, I'd probably collapse on the spot.
なんでそんな死に方したのかな？わかりませんか？シオン。
I'm asking you because I don't know.
わかんないよ。理由なんて一つしかないじゃないですか。
Don't give away too much, Shion. Please don't talk as if I already know the answer.
何の理由かな？
My heart was pounding. I felt like my next breath would be so bloody and hot I'd choke on it.
そんなこともわかんないのですか？
Because they made Orishio-sama angry. The first year it was the manager of the dam construction site. Second year was the traders of the village. Third year was the pacifist. Fourth year was the recluse, the relatives of the traders. I'd always thought the victims were people who had something to do with the dam conflict. Since I didn't do anything against the village during the dam conflict, I assumed I was safe. I should have known. I should have known everything would be the curse of Orishio-sama. I knew Orishio-sama's anger was the curse of Orishio-sama. I knew Orishio-sama would get angry if I snuck into the ritual house. But since I wasn't held responsible in any way for the dam conflict, I never thought I'd be a victim of the curse. Did I ever think there would be an incident in the 5th year? Did I even think that I'd be the victim of the 5th year incident? Tomitaka-kun snuck out of the storehouse and he clawed at his own throat until he died. Takano-san was burned to death in an oil drum. It must be a lie. It couldn't be true. Even if it were forbidden, it was just a space for storing some old torture implements. How could they be killed for just sneaking in there? Especially in such a gruesome ways. But I thought about it again and realized that those people were absolutely capable of doing things like that. The main Sonozaki family was capable of it. The Sonozaki family had been pulling the strings behind the series of mysterious deaths. They could do it. The Sonozaki family even kidnapped the grandson of the Minister of Construction during the dam conflict. They could do it. The Sonozaki family made Satoshi-kun disappear completely. They could do it. Mion leaned against me before falling into the cold hallway floor. She collapsed rather violently. I usually didn't go to sleep with my stun gun, but since I was too tired and sleepy to get ready for bed, I still had it on me. Oh gosh, I had my stun gun on me. I finally understood. I didn't know who killed them exactly, whose idea it was or who ordered it. I didn't even know who was actually involved. But Mion and the hag knew everything. Satoshi-kun, now I finally know. I know what I need to know when I need to do. I will settle the score for you, Satoshi-kun. I will avenge you, Satoshi-kun. Wait. Oh, wait. No. No, 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 no. You're not. That can't be. This is you saying. Wait. Did they say that was the? It was Mion already dead. But then how was? But Shion was in the. Okay, so I was thinking for a second that she kills Mion here, and throws her down the well. No. What if she changes clothes with her, hides her in the torture room, pretends to be Mion, and everyone we saw the whole time during chapter 2 was actually Shion being Mion, that they had swapped because she went crazy deciding that Mion had killed Satoshi, and just swaps, and then is desperately trying to stop the situation from spiraling. And so the whole time, Mion actually was the one inside the torture room. What if that's what it was? What the? Could that be what's happening here? That would be insane. I won't be killed by you. I won't be killed like you, Satoshi-kun. I walked into the hag's room. She was sitting up to take some medicine. Her back was turned to me. Oh gosh, is this why she disappeared? Oryou was gone the whole time? Mion and I are twins. If I acted like her, the hag wouldn't notice the difference. I didn't think she ever suspected me. So I put the stun gun to her neck and pulled the trigger. Holy crap, I heard an indescribable electrical sound. The hag's lights went out. She fell in a twisted position. I didn't know how long it would take for a person to regain their freedom of movement after getting knocked out with a stun gun, so I had to restrain them before they woke back up. I was unbelievably calm. Holy crap, the key of the underground torture room was in the forbidden drawer that only the head of the family can access. Mion had told me about this once. I'd never looked for the drawer before, but I found exactly where I thought it would be. The key was on a keychain with several of its sisters. Each key had a little plaque on it that said what it was used for. They were all Mion's handwriting. She was an idiot for being so conscientious, but sure helped me out. I put the keychain in my pocket and headed to the outer storeroom to find the cart. I found a large flashlight there as well. Oh, fetch me. Holy crap. Oh my gosh. There was a snap of the flashlight so I could put it on my shoulder. The way, I'd have both hands free to carry Mion and the hag. I loaded Mion and gave grandmother onto the cart and our grandmother onto the cart and carried them to the underground torture room. I was prepared to use the stun gun again if they woke up while I was working, but it was more powerful than I imagined. The hag showed no signs of waking. She might have just been killed outright. This was the stun gun Kasai specially ordered for me when I told him I wanted a powerful one. I remember him telling me that it was an illegally modified stun gun, that I should never use it, and I should never use it just for fun. I used my flashlight to find the light switch, found it easily, and turned it on. All the lights went on in the basement. Although there was now illumination, it was very dim. I moved quickly so to finish what I needed to do before they woke up. I decided to put Mion in a cell beyond the torture room. The lights of the torture room were so bright it was like daylight. There was a door there. I was fairly certain the cells were on the other side of that door. The proper key was here. The key made a tinkle and was found. I felt the cold air coming in through the gap in the door. There must be a huge opening on the other side. I opened the door and saw nothing but darkness. I felt along the wall to find a light switch. Turned on the switch, and the bulbs lit up, revealing a huge rocky cave. It didn't look like a natural cave, it looked more like an air raid shelter. There were several hollow openings with bars across them. They were the cells. I walked up to the closest cell and checked to see if it was strong enough to confine her. I pushed and pulled on the bars. I rammed against them with all my weight and decided they were perfectly sturdy. This was secure enough to be called a cell. I opened the lock and carried Mion in. It wasn't particularly strong, just average. I'd never thought I was strong enough to carry a whole person. But now I didn't need to pretend to be weak. I could easily lift and drag their bodies. I put Mion in the cell. She seemed to moan a little. I didn't need to check to make sure. The effect of the stun gun was wearing off. I closed the bars and turned the key in the lock, then I ran to the hag, who must have been starting to wake up too. Fortunately, there's no sign of her regaining consciousness. Maybe a little difference in age had something to do with it. Little difference, huh? I looked at a table to restrain her on. I found a wheelchair with restraints for her hands and feet and put the hag in it. Of course she didn't resist, but her dead weight made it seem like she was a huge French doll, but one made of flesh. I put her hands in the armrests and restrained them with the wrists with the metal rings and hinges. I did the same with her feet. This must have been a wheelchair specifically remodeled to restrain a person. Other than restraints, it was a regular wheelchair. I waited for the hag to wake up. I had so many things I wanted to ask her. I didn't think she'd answer honestly, but I had plenty of tools to make her talk. It was in no rush. When the hag had a concern, relatives took care of the problem. That was how it worked in the Sonozaki family. She was a leader of the family, so all the information they gathered would make its way to her. Oh gosh, okay. There is a chance here we actually learn some real good information. But fetch me, this certainly changes the scope, the picture of what Chapter 2 was. Holy crap. Woo! She must know everything that happened at Hinamizawa, including the curse of Oryou-sama. I heard the noise from the cell. Mion must have woken up before the hag did. Speaking of the hag, she didn't seem like she was about to wake up anytime soon, but she was restrained even if she did, so I had no need to fear. I left the hag there and headed for the cell.
シオン。これは何の真似ですか?
She's panicking. She talked like the successor, but she also sounded frightened. She obviously understood the situation she was in right now.
おはよう、ミオン。まさか自分が閉じ込められることになるとは思わなかった？園崎家当主代行として命じます。ここを。声色に一つ凄みが欠けますね。当主様はもっと傲慢な言い方をしなきゃね。もっとも、そういう言い方ができたとしても、今のあんたは滑稽なだけなんだけどさ。
Wait, okay, so... If we remember Chapter 2, things spiral out of control. For some reason, the mayor tries to intercede in something, but then he ends up dead. He vanishes. Is it because he sees too much? Or maybe it turns out he's involved in what happened to Satoshi. And then, was it Rika or Satoko that went for to get more soy sauce? They go, and they get lured to the house, and then they get dropped in the pit, and Satoko also. Oh, if Shion goes on a warpath and she ends up getting a helpless Satoko in her hands, that's gonna be super unpleasant. Oh, I don't like where this is going. Like I'm now seeing trajectories in my head, and they all are so much worse than I thought. Oh no. Oh no. There was nothing funny about it, but I wanted to imitate Mion. The laughter echoed throughout the cave. It was artificial and meaningless laughter. I heard it over and over as it echoed. It sounded as if I wasn't the only one laughing. I couldn't stand it, so I stopped. Silence filled the air. That silence almost hurt my ears, so I started to speak.
富武さんと高野さんが今年の犠牲になるとはね、思わなかった。高野さんのドラム缶に詰めて焼き殺したってのもなかなかやるね。ま、あの人はそういう死に方を自分で希望してたっぽいからね。結構満足してるかもよ。
Oh my gosh, Shion. Mion didn't say anything. She just stared at me to see how I'd proceed.
富武さんの自分で自分の喉を引き裂いたってのは
Can you tell me how? I want to know.
凶器に駆り立てるような怪しいお薬でも注射したの？
Yeah, you did.
それとも、そういう死に方に見せるような拷問道具でもあるわけ？
Mion didn't reply. I was smiling boldly, but I became impatient and finally kicked the bars. It made a violent noise. Mion jumped as if she was kicked directly.
返事がないと退屈です。私を怒らせるとどんな得が？
Holy crap, Shion.
私が知るわけないでしょ。
Mion finally replied. She was obvious, but at the same time sounded pitiful. Oh, odious. Sorry, not obvious. Odious.
ねえ、ミオン。次期当主様。ここまで来ちゃったんだから、
I just had too many things I wanted to ask her. I wanted to ask her about me, about the incident, about the curse, about Satoshi-kun. I didn't even know where to start. Before I even asked her about those, I asked her one other thing.
私に対して反抗的な態度をとっても何の得にもならないこと。
Yeah.
理解してますよね。
Unfortunately, she's got you good. The downside being what she's done here, maybe the switch between Shion and Mion might not be noticed by most, if anybody. But Oryou going missing is going to be the problem. Because if she dies, the family make a huge deal of it. And you could try and pretend like, oh, she's ill, she doesn't want any visitors, but that's only going to last so long. Mion glared at me silently. Because we were twins, I knew that was just a bluff.
もうここまでやっちゃった以上、私も引っ込みがつかないんで。お姉も、私に容赦とか躊躇とか、そういうものをあまり期待しない方がいいかもです。
Yeah, we've kind of hit that point, haven't we? Mion must have been feeling the cold sweat on her face. Although the light was dim, I could tell she was frightened.
じゃあ聞くよ。Hinamizawa村連続開始事件。
Oh my gosh. This, from an investigator, like, I want to understand the story point of view, this is actually gold. We actually get to have a cornered individuals who probably have always known more than they've said, being directly asked, how did you do this? How did this happen? What is going on?
通称、お社様のたたり。これって、どういう意味があるの？やっぱりダム戦争のけじめってやつ？私は、多分そうだと思ってる。
Mion sounded a little confused, but she answered. Felt satisfaction now that we were communicating. I continued with a smile.
思ってるって言い方が少し頼りないね。そのあたりの事情は詳しくないの？シオンだってわかってるでしょ。次期当主なんて、バッチャの取り次ぎに過ぎないよ。
Yeah, right.
その当主様と意思を疎通させて、以心伝心なのが、次期当主様の役目でしょ？取り次ぎに過ぎないなんて信じると思う？いつも身近にいる私だって、たまにバッチャが何を考えてるのかわからない時があるもん。何でもかんでも私が理解してるわけじゃない。じゃあ、お社様のたたりってのは、あいつが全部独断で決めてるわけなんだ。次期当主様と相談して決めてるのかと思ったよ。やばい話は、全部バッチャが一人で決めてる。私なんか預かり知る余地もない。でも、ばあさんの独断だとしたって、あいつはあんたを介してやりとりしてるわけでしょ？
Basically, Shion's trying to make Mion admit how much she gets involved. Because she's like, you have to be somewhat involved. It means you'd know. You know enough.
そのあんたが何も知らないなんてあるはず。違うよ。私なんかを介していない。私にだってよくわからないんだけど、私が陽の部分を取り継いでるとしたら、陰の部分を取り継いでいる誰かがいると思う。
But it's like I take care of problems on the surface and someone else takes care of problems on the underside. So that's the thing. Who's the other person? If there's a physical like a successor who like is the prominent like face of the family, who's the dirty like underhand? Who's the left hand? Like who is that person? And my suspicion's been building that it might be Dr. Irie. 誰？その影の部分の取り次ぎって。知らない。誰かを招いて話してるとことか、電話をしているとことか見たことない？強いて言えば、毎年お社様のたたりの時期になると連絡量がどっと増える相手ね。 Unless it's somebody that she's in contact with fairly often.
わかんない。心当たりなんかないよ。
Neon. You're really not in a good position to negotiate. Mion shook her head.
まあいいや。じゃあ質問を変えるね。今年のたたりの富武さんと高野さんは、ダム戦争に直接関係してないのに、なぜ犠牲に選ばれたの？やっぱり、西宮殿に忍び込んだから？
As soon as Mion heard the words ritual storehouse, her expression shifted.
西宮殿に？古手神社の西宮殿を犯したの？ありゃ。知ってるとばかり。
Oh. See, that implies then that they were chosen as targets for other reasons. So why? Why were they chosen? And remember, we know through Rika that they were chosen, or at least somewhat chosen. I'm not sure how defined it was, but like it has been decided. It was decided a little while ago. So why?
そんなことをしたら、バカ、当然だよ。
Interesting. Mion muttered bitterly while shaking her head repeatedly. Mion's reaction made me realize the true meaning of the Forbidden Storehouse room for ritual implements. The ritual storehouse is a sacred building, so nobody can go inside. The curse will fall upon anyone who disobeys. Any child would know that rule. However, just because they knew about it doesn't mean they all believed in it. Although they were told they would be accursed, most of the kids actually enjoyed hearing the stories. They simply didn't believe it was true. However, Mion's reaction told me it absolutely was. If they actually did that, of course something bad would happen to them. If she was saying that someone snuck into the ritual storehouse, that person should be killed.
私がこっちに帰ってきて以降、たまにミオンとは認識が食い違いますね。そりゃ私だって、西宮殿が迂闊に入っちゃやばいとこだってのは知ってますけど、あんな死に方しても当然だってほどやばいとは思わないんだけど、私たちだって、その程度の認識じゃなかったでしたっけ？それは、シオンがよく知らないだけだよ。
Well, unignorant me.
すみませんね。よく知らなくて。説明をいただいてもよろしいですか？そりゃシオンの言う通り、子供の世界では、やばいとかたたりがあるとか言ったって、どうせ迷信に過ぎないだろう。でも大人にバレたらかなり怒られるんだろうなって、程度の認識だと思う。
Right.
でもね、Hinamizawaの古老たちにとっては、そんな甘いものじゃないの。
Mion explained to me how the elderly people blindly believed in Oryou-sama and how sacred the festivals are to them. It's probably something the younger generation would never understand, but they're possessed by a very strong, deeply rooted devotion toward Oryou-sama. Mion then went on to tell me about how sinful it was to violate the rule of the ritual storehouse. I just couldn't believe things like that were still going on even in the modern day. I couldn't even reply appropriately. But even if it were unbelievable, I couldn't ignore what I was hearing from my twin sister.
なるほどね。でもさ、ミオン。たたりで一人が死んだら、それを相殺する意味で一人を生贄にするのがルールじゃなかったっけ？生贄の死体は出ない。
Yeah.
なのに今回は、二人とも死体が出ちゃってるんだけど、そのあたりはどう見る？
Mion doesn't know that besides Takano-san and Toмотaki-san, Keiichi and I also snuck into the ritual storehouse. So I tried to lead her a little.
確かに、おかしいね。高野さんの焼死体は見つかっちゃいけなかったってことなのかな？
Yeah.
本当は高野さんは失踪ってことになるのがパーフェクトだったのかな？
And in the first chapter, that is what technically happened.
あるいは、自信はないけど。何？根拠なんかいらないから言ってみてよ。怒らないから。
Mion hesitated for a little first and started to speak.
西宮殿に忍び込んだのは、実は4人とか。
Alright, so who were they?
それで？で、もう2人は、生贄ってことで、鬼隠しになってるんじゃないかな。
Okay. That would break the pattern, but that's kind of what they were thinking before. But now that Shion's in this position, how's this gonna work? Maybe Shion's gonna try and... Oh, right! There's a whole thing where Mion, basically, she goes to... Mion at the school goes to Keiichi, says, did you sneak into the storehouse? And, like, I think he confesses or something, and then she's like, alright, I'm gonna make this right. And that's when the mayor vanishes. Because the mayor, maybe he's the one that knows who snuck in. And so she tries to eliminate him. And then it starts cascading from there in an attempt to save Keiichi. Because from everyone's perspective on the outside, Shion already has vanished. Because now she's Mion, I think. So, yeah, I don't know, man. Ooh. Mion's words were stuck in my head. If those two dead bodies were the result of the curse, then there should be two sacrifices to calm Oryou-sama's anger. The four of us snuck into the shrine storage together. It was a simple equation. Did that mean that Keiichi was in danger, and I were in danger? Dude, you're in danger just because of tonight. I got drunk, fell asleep, and decided to stay overnight. Was that because of the alcohol, or did someone put drug in my drink? It's not like me to get drunk and spend the night at the hag's house. I wanted to forget about what happened in the eerie storehouse, so I drank too much. Oh, that is interesting, though. Throwing out that possibility that it still is orchestrated by people. And, like, what if somebody intended for her to stay? But it really was strange for me to get that drunk. Maybe it was a good thing I woke up in the middle of the night. It could have been the one to wake up in the cell. Sometimes it's hard to recognize danger when you avoid it accidentally. And part of me wanted to just laugh at the idea, but another part of felt frightened that I was so close to being in Mion's position. If my thinking was correct, I wonder how Keiichi Maribara was doing right now. I didn't see him in any of the cells, but that didn't guarantee his safety. Takano-san and Tomitaka-san had been executed. There was a possibility Keiichi could already be dead. But just like what happened to Satoshi-kun, it might only happen a few days. When the sun rose, I was going to pretend to be Mion and head to her school. I was going to check if Keiichi Maribara was safe. If he had already disappeared, the enemy would come after me next. I'd have to I'd have to be a decoy for myself. But if he was still safe, I need to keep my eyes on him. I was sure the enemy would come after the scatterbrain. If I became Mion, Shion would disappear. The enemy would think Shion had already been demoned away. They'd concentrate on Keiichi. If nothing happened to Keiichi, that would also be fine. It proved nothing would happen to me either. The hag was still sleeping in the wheelchair. I was going to interrogate her, but actually, I wasn't expecting to learn that much. The woman, who was also known as Empress Sonozaki, probably wouldn't say a thing if her fingers were cut off. Mion, her successor, was the complete opposite. She spoke readily and didn't know too much about anything. Mion had said she was only a messenger, and that someone else was taking care of problems on the underside. It was possible Mion had grown to be a good liar and that she tried to deceive me with a straight face. But at the same time, I could see the hag not letting Mion get involved in the underside of the village. If I were her, I wouldn't have used Mion for that either. Unlike me, Mion was a nice person. While there was only ones and zeros in the world, she believed there were numbers with decimal points. Interesting. That's an interesting way of phrasing that. Also, I like how Shion is basically calling herself out as being kind of like a psychopath, basically. And it's interesting, too. She talks about how she has the demon in her. It really seems like Shion should have been the inheritor. Like, it really feels like in the end, she was the better match. Mion would have been better to be sent off to the private school. But yeah, the idea, like, of being a kind person in a cruel world. While there were only ones and zeros in the world, she believed there were numbers with decimal points. In other words, she could never be cruel. If the hag thought the same way I do, it was very possible. The one who took care of problems on the underside, X, was the one who actually governed the curse of Orishiro-sama. If the hag became concerned about something, X would deal with it, either directly or indirectly. Or maybe the hag and X would discuss the details first. But did X really exist? X. This is going to become our new nominator. I do think X exists because I'm still, despite all the weirdness, I still think a human element is the major component to this. And I'm guessing Dr. Irie might be X. I don't know, though. I don't hear him being described as being of any of the central family meetings. So maybe Dr. Irie is more of like an executioner, where X is like the director, and we don't know who that is quite yet. What could it be? I don't know. If he did, his place in the village hierarchy was a lot more important than that of the successor. Unlike Mion, who was too nice. He was discreet, cruel, and cunning. It keeps making them a he, so how much you want to bet it's a girl? I mean, like, part of me is almost thinking, like, what if it's Rika? I would explain why she knows why everything's been decided and how it's all supposed to happen, but why would she then execute herself? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Furthermore, he was extremely close to the hag. Someone who would have a lot of contact with her just before it was time for the curse. Because of the way Tomitaka-san died, it could be someone who regularly dealt with unusual drugs. He could be a member of the medical institution. See, that's what Dr. Irie right there, right? Yeah, the director of the Irie Clinic. Irie? In this isolated village, Irie was famous for opening such a beautiful clinic and for working so hard for the villagers' sake. The villagers liked his mature personality and really respected him. There's nothing scarier than a doctor who's also a murderer. If Irie was the person behind the curse, all the mysterious deaths could be explained. However, there was only a slim chance of Irie being X. The main reason being that the hag wouldn't trust him. Like many of the elderly, the hag doesn't like young people. She'd never trust him because of his anger. Okay. So I think what's going to pitch for Dr. Irie might be involved. Like I said, he might be like the executioner or like one of the main like super cult like hitmen. But if the hag would only trust elderly people, And then that would mean maybe that was the thing. I've always dismissed the mayor as just being this guy, right? But what if the mayor is actually the head of the assassination cult side of things? Oh, that would be interesting. Because then the three branches of the families would be the Sonozakis, which are like the material and like prominent leaders, like they're the face of the village, right? Then you have the Furudes, who were the shrine tenders, the keepers of the holy practices, right? And then finally you had the mayor, who I just kind of figured was a declined, just relative, right? But we've also heard about that the mayor's house probably has its own torture room somewhere hidden. And the mayor is like the head of they're essentially their ninjas, their secret assassin corps. That could explain it. If Dr. Oryou related to the mayor, that could be a big tie-in. That might be it. I could see that the three branches of the three families working together. Like one is the material leader, one is the spiritual leader, and one is the secret assassinator. The executioners. Furthermore, she had openly criticized his behavior among the relatives once. Although Oryou was famous, he was an outsider after all. He wasn't born here. He tried to maintain a good relationship with the villagers as the director of the clinic, but that was just on the surface. That's odd though, because again, they call him in with the child in the mountains. It's they do trust him to an extent. I couldn't even imagine the hag telling him about her worries or about the villagers' underside. If she was as suspicious as the others of I was, then she'd only gather trustworthy people to deal with that underside. The first people that came to my mind were the leaders of the three families. Yep. And it could be Rika, but that feels odd because Rika doesn't want to die, so she somehow knows about what's going on. I still think it's more that she just kind of picks up on the subtle messaging that she uses to communicate her needs. Leaving Rika-chama out, the head of the Kimiyoshi family was a strong possibility. I like how I'm putting pieces together, but only seconds before it just tells them to me. So it's cool, but not very insightful. He was only the one who could advise the Emperor Sonozaki. They were of similar age, and everyone knew that they were very close outside the family councils. Furthermore, as the mayor, he often went to Sonozaki House just before Watanagashi to discuss festival preparations. I could easily picture them talking privately. He always seems so nice, though. I mean, I guess a good assassin would. The one who executed the curse of Yoshio-sama? The one who murdered Takano-san and Toмотaka-san? The mastermind behind the scenes of the mysterious deaths that have been going on for the past 5 years? Was he coming after me? Did he get to Satoshi-kun? When I thought about Satoshi-kun, I felt elevated. I was fearful of the possibility of this year's victim being this year's victim until just a moment ago. I was scared that X was after me. But when I thought about it, I realized whoever it was, the person had gotten Satoshi-kun. I'd looked so hard, but I couldn't find him. I'd almost forgotten about this enemy. For better or for worse, he was going to appear before me again. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find that enemy. But now he was trying to find me. That was it. I wasn't only being chased. I was chasing too. When I realized all this, I was no longer afraid of dying in the 5th year's curse. It had become a game. It wasn't only being threatened. I was threatening too. Now was the time to settle the score for Satoshi-kun. Now was the time to awaken passions that had grown weak over the past year. I could feel righteous indignation and courage flare up within me. The only emotion that can defeat fear is anger. When my anger completely overtook my fear, it felt as if I were reborn. This is really dangerous.
鬼ババ様、そろそろ目を覚ましてくださいません。
I think she's going to go on a vendetta, and she's going to become a vendetta of blood, where she's going to basically be torturing all these people trying to find the answers. He kicked the wheelchair rather violently, but that didn't wake her up either.
ひょっとして眠ったふりをしてやり過ごそうとか考えてません？
I grabbed her hair and pulled her head up, but even then the hag still stayed silent with a straight face. Then I noticed something. I looked for an appropriate torture device. They were all larger scale, none of them being particularly handy. That's when I saw a cigarette lighter on the cushion of the tatami room. One of the relatives must have left it there. I lit the lighter. A huge flame appeared. I turned the lighter off and went back to the hag with it.
見えてます？見えてない。これ誰の忘れ物かわかりませんけどね。ライターです。
I lit this in front of her eyes.
今からこれであなたの鼻を焼きます。嫌でしょ？ 私も嫌です。ですから寝たふりをやめてください。
There was still no response. I put the flame right up to her nose without hesitation. The tip of the flame touched the tip of her nose. The flame must have burned her nose hair. It smelled terrible. I was already certain, but I continued anyway. I brought the flame closer to her eye. Her eyelid didn't move one bit. The flame burned her eyelashes, making the smell awful again. I turned the lighter off and then felt her throat and wrist. Didn't feel any warmth. Yeah, I figured that she'd just killed her outright, but that's the other thing too. Is like, why did she go for the flame burning first? That's just, gosh, Shion, you've gone really weird. She's on a power trip. Didn't feel a pulse either.
こいつ、スタンガンで死ん
Probably.
だ。
There was no way she could pretend to be asleep without being burned. Even if she endured the pain, anyone would reflexively move their eyelid if a flame came close to their eye. But she didn't. I turned the sink water on and aimed the eye of the hose in the hag's face. The water pressure wasn't too high, but squeezing the tip of her nose, I could make it squirt out. The water hit the hag's face, but there's still no reaction. Shoot. You've got to be kidding me. She's dead. The one who was at the center of everything is dead now. I knew she wouldn't talk, but I didn't expect her to end up dead. I'd never even thought about killing her. I walked around the room restlessly. I didn't feel guilty, but instead felt frustrated with what I'd done. Come on. I need to calm down. What do I need to be afraid of? Calm down and stay cool. I don't know, you're a murderer now. Like, because that's the thing. You could even argue that hitting Mion with the stun gun, while excessive, was pretty much self-defense. But you specifically went after the hack. Oh no. Stay cool. I could feel my brain starting to calm down, and my emotions cooling down with it. She was my true enemy. I was just that I killed her before confronting her about it. Sooner or later, I would have killed her anyway. She wouldn't have said anything in the first place, so there wasn't any real reason why I shouldn't have let her live. I didn't realize that until now, that's why I was frustrated. My revenge for Satoshi-kun started with the unexpected death of my grandmother. It was such a strange feeling, like I was wearing sopping wet clothes. I replaced that feeling with anger. I couldn't forgive her. I couldn't forgive the hag for abusing the Hojo family, including Satoshi-kun, for so many years. She cornered him psychologically as well as physically. She didn't deserve an easy death from a stun gun. I picked up the whip that was hanging on the wall. Whipping was designed to make sure the person on the receiving end got seriously injured. I swung it up and then down. The sound reminded me of when a child hitting things in jump rope and I pretended it was a whip. But unlike then, it made purple marks on the hag's face and reddish-black blood started oozing out. I swung up and down again. This time, the whip hit her in the head. Her hair flew in the air. I saw a bunch of hair on the tip of the whip. At the end of the bunch of hair was a piece of her skin. It seemed the whip had ripped off part of her scalp. Ugh, fetch me. I continued to hit her with the whip. Didn't bother removing hair beforehand. The tip of the whip was divided into many points, with each point having a fish hook in the end. Ugh. This thing's horrifying. Those hooks, added to the speed of the whip, not only scratched the victim, but tore their skin as well. The hag's hair was all messed up and her face was getting bloody. She started to look like a real demon. I stopped the whipping. Not because my arm was tired, but because I couldn't stand the feeling of her hair on the tip touching me every time I swung the whip. I threw the whip at the hag. Breathing heavily, I realized I was covered in her hair. It almost felt like 1,000 maggots crawling all over me. I brushed it off violently. So is Mion just like watching in horror? I figured she would have said something by now.
思い知ったか、鬼ババ。
I put my hands on my knees and exhaled roughly. It was then I noticed it. I perked up and turned around. There it is. The person who had been watching me since I snuck into the storage. I sensed this person sitting in the tatami room. I enjoyed watching me torture my grandmother. An overwhelming emotion started to swallow me up. I tried desperately not to feel it.
いつからそこにいたんだか、言ってくれればよかったのに。
It was just there. Just like Satoshi-kun, it was just there. It was extremely uncomfortable to have it just be there.
そっか。レナが言ってたもんね。あんた、お社様ってのは。
Smiled boldly, and yet I could feel my body shivering.
冗談じゃない。あんたがお社様で、たたりは本当にお社様のたたりってわけなの？ バカ誰が信じるかよ
It was just my imagination. It couldn't be the curse of Oryou-sama. The curse couldn't be real. Everything was done by humans. They made everything look like it was a curse.
まあ、あんたが見たいってんなら勝手だけどさ。私は見物料を取るつもりもない。でも、私の邪魔をしようってんなら、あんただって容赦しないよ。
No matter what I said, nothing happened. It was just like trying to communicate with an insect. I felt like I was staring at a spider in the middle of its web, and the spider was staring back. I just turned the hag into a wheelchair. I couldn't leave her body here forever. If I don't need to make her death known, then it should be quick. If it's best, the body doesn't exist. Not even this secret underground torture room. Whew. I exhaled to try and calm myself down. Oh, I remember now. When I was a little girl. Kasai used to love making me feel scared. He often told me scary stories about various horrible things. I recalled a story about the secret torture room of the Sonozaki family. According to the story, there was a well in the torture room for dumping bodies in. There was a pile of tortured corpses at the bottom of that well. Resentful moans could be heard echoing from there. About halfway down the well, there was a different tunnel, which was a secret passage leading into the distant mountains. That bit was from Mion's telling of the story. It was probably an amalgamation of tellings from different relatives. The room was supposed to be a huge secret, but everyone got loose lips at the chance to have fun scaring the young successor.
ミオン、昔親戚の誰かが言ってたじゃん。この地下拷問室のどこかに隠し井戸があって、外へ出られる秘密の通路があるって話。さっきの音は聞こえてなかった？鬼ババを鞭で叩く音。
Okay, so Mion couldn't see it. She just heard it. Mion didn't reply, but I saw her bite her lip.
大丈夫。あんたは叩かない。でもね、あんたが不愉快だと、鬼ババをもっと叩くかもしれない。今度は鞭なんかじゃなくて。そこの奥、暗がりにも牢屋があるでしょ。その中。
Mion pointed weakly. I walked down where her finger indicated. A light bulb lit up the ceiling. It was a lot smaller than the one Mion was in. It was very shallow. They didn't even need to open the door to see how tiny it was. Of course, there's no well in there. I became angry, assuming she'd lied to me, but after considering, I didn't actually think she would at this point. I opened the door and walked in. I noticed something immediately. There was an opening right in the middle of the cell. The opening was naturally disguised. The way the rocks and the shadows were positioned perfectly hid the well. The tip of the rock inside the cell concealed the entrance. Unless you went in, you'd never notice. But it was such a shallow cell, nobody would even think of going in. Besides, the bars allowed you to see inside well enough. The cell's not even a few meters deep. It would only take a glance to see everything. Nobody would think of unlocking the door and walking in. But walking in was the only way that you could find the well. Kinda clever. Furthermore, there were many cells in this huge cave. Who would think that one of them was hiding a secret well? The inside the well was dark. I couldn't see anything. But every little noise I made produced echoes. I could tell this was a very deep well. I brought a flashlight from the torture room and shone it down the well. It almost looked more like a vertical tunnel. Obviously, a man made one at that. There were wedges on the walls like ladders, and they looked as if they were inviting me to descend. It's kind of ironic that the secret escape route from the underground torture room ended up being a well that takes you even further down. You have no way of knowing whether it would take you to freedom or to hell. Furthermore, there was tortured bodies of past victims at the bottom. Who would be able to go down this well without hesitation? Nobody in their right mind could go down this well and look for a secret tunnel, hearing the voices of the dead all the while. That's why it's a perfect
ミ
place.
オンはあの井戸、降りたことあるの？降りたくもない。それに関しては著しく同感。この拷問室の犠牲者たちが放り込まれた井戸になんか、好き好んで降りたくはないもんね。
I went back to the torture room and then returned to the cave, pushing the wheelchair containing the hag. Mion screamed.
シオン、バッチャを落とす気？落とすんじゃないよ。捨てるんだよ。
Oh gosh.
もう死んでるしね。さっきの拷問で死んだんじゃないよ。多分鬼ババはスタンガンで死んだんだよ。
Fetch me.
心臓麻痺とかで。放置してもいいけど、虫が湧くと嫌でしょ？
I mean, it still will.
ひどい。なんなら、死後の鬼ババの世話もする？湧いてくるウジを箸でつまんで捨てるとかやってみる？
This is freaking cruel, Shion. She's lost her mind. Mion covered her ears and shook her head. Everything I said seemed to bother Mion. Her own life wasn't guaranteed at this point.
しお。どうしてこんなことを。さーて、どうしてだと思います？
Nobody said anything for a while, but the silence was soon broken.
サトシ。敵討ちってこと。敵討ちになったかも。いきなり後ろからバチンだったから。何が何やらわかんないうちにご臨終だったろうし。ねえミオン、今こうして思い返すと、私はやっぱりばあさんを殺すだけの理由があったように思う
Oh
の。
boy.
なぜかわかる？単にサトシ君を殺した張本人だからってだけじゃないよ。それは嘘をついたから。
I slapped the hag's head.
あんたも言ったよね。私が爪を剥がせば全て許すって。だから私は爪を剥がしたんだよ。3枚も。それでけじめがついたってことになったんだよね。でも約束は守られなかった。サトシ君はやっぱり消されてしまった。どうして？どういうことなの？
Akane just slapped the hag's head. Her blood was all over my hand by then, and it felt gross. I tried to wipe it off her clothes, but her hair got on my hand. I ran to the sink and torture room and washed my hands with a brush. When I was done, I went back to Mion's cell.
あの時、サトシ君がいなくなってしまった後、あんたが来て言ったよね。サトシ君と私の関係は、けじめがもうついてたって。そしてこうも言ったよね。サトシ君の失踪の理由は、園崎本家は何も知らないと。うん。嘘だ！
See, that's funny. Because that sounds so much like what Mion was doing in the second chapter, or who I thought was Mion. It wasn't Mion. They swapped on Watanagashi. Lied. My shouts echoed through the cave. I was breathing heavily. Felt like I used up all my air in my lungs.
あんたが何も知らないのは本当だと思う。あんた自身、ばあさんに真の意味で信頼を得ていたかは怪しいからね。でも、ばあさんが本当に私のけじめでサトシ君を許したかはわからないよ。アマちゃんのあんたに、本当のところを打ち明けるわけもない。
The hag didn't keep her promise. She said she'd forgiven everyone, but she lied. She didn't forgive. She didn't forgive Satoshi-kun.
嘘つき、嘘つき、嘘つき、嘘つき、嘘つき、嘘つき！返してサトシ君。返してよサトシ君！返して！
Oh my gosh. I kicked the hag's leg repeatedly. Each time I kicked, the wheelchair made a squeaky noise. I ran out of breath and kneeled down. Mion was still covering her ears. She was now shaking. There were tears in her eyes.
怖がらせちゃったね。ごめん。ミオンがミオンの言うように、何も知らなかったなら、安心して。でも、もしミオンも嘘をついていたなら仕方ない。その時は、どういう目に遭わされても、仕方ない。
Holy crap.
仕方ないよね。
Oh my gosh. She's freaking crazy. Like I said, I think she would have been a better inheritor of the family name. Oh boy. Holy crap. That's so crazy. Sting of payback. Took the first step toward revenge. First step. Oh no. Alright, well, Notebook page 183. I wasn't planning to kill the hag so quickly. I was going to kill her anyway, but it was too soon. People would normally assume that the Sonozaki family operates as a hierarchy, but that's not true. It's actually more like a system of government, several ministries stemming from the main family, each form of hierarchy of its own. These ministries don't communicate with one another. The people who belong to a given ministry don't know what the other ministries are doing. That way, the Sonozaki family's dealings are kept perfectly secret. Of course, the most important people in the family govern several ministries. They know, of course, but their own ministries... They know a little about the ministries that their relatives run, but none of them know everything. There are ministries that work in the open. There are ministries that work unseen. There are some smaller ones that Oryou runs herself. Mion seems to know about most of them, but she doesn't necessarily know all of them. In fact, she doesn't know about the curse. Considering that, the fact that the hag died before I could interrogate her is a huge loss. I got thoughts. We'll get to them in a second. Okay, notebook 185. The head of the Kimiyoshi family is the one they call the main house the most often after the 5th year's curse. My father called the second most. My parents are still high in their hierarchy, but the stir caused by my mother's disownment still hung over us, so we got treated as outcasts. So the fact that my father received so many calls proved how much the hag valued us despite the distance at which we were kept, demonstrating her own two-faced respect for both sides of the coin. My father seemed to be in charge of the intelligence bureau. He reported police information, gossip, or rumors going around the Yakuza business to the hag. He silences, stirs, and distorts that information at her request. By the way, my servant Kasai is an old friend of my father's. That must be why Kasai knows many things. But I don't know if my father is involved in the curse's execution. My assumption is that although he gathered information on the police investigations about the case, he wasn't involved in the execution itself. The fact that my father and the hag have this close connection isn't widely known. People know that she uses the information network, but they don't look very far beyond that. In the same way, it's possible that the curse execution team exists under the hag's direct control. People just aren't aware of it. Interesting. Okay. So, I don't think bombshell is the word. It's like, that feels more like nuclear, that twist. And it makes me wonder something. I could accept, and a lot of Chapter 2 actually ends up making sense, if you assume that from this point on, it's Shion that we see. That Mion was the one that was in the cell, while Keiichi was getting tortured, and that Shion was the one who slipped down the well trying to escape and dies. Mion gets released, but breaks, and so she runs away and tries to stab Keiichi for some reason. And then, I don't know, just a lot. Oh, maybe she tried to stab him because he calls her Shion, and like that, just like she can't stand that. But anyway, the idea about the organization and the curse team. Yeah, like I do like how it talked about Dr. Irie, but it points out the connection that like Dr. Irie likely isn't like trusted directly, so he's probably just part of the team. That's fine. I still think that's very likely that he's just he's a tool, a weapon, or at least the person probably derived like whatever serum was used to kill Toмотaka-san. But the thought I had, we're reading these notebooks, right? The notebooks are reminiscent of this idea that they are evidence that are being gathered by Oishi and Akasaka after the gas like kills the village, and they're trying to like compile all the information and tell the story of what really happened and who's responsible. And if that's the case, then these are events that are happening. From what I understand, majority of these events in these documents would be reflected in all three of the timelines that we saw, chapter 1, 2, and 3. That like while yes, the events play out like differently in some regard, the core features of them are consistent. And if that's true, then that kind of implies that Shion and Mion have this swap happen at Watanagashi all the time, all three stories. And that kind of makes sense, because remember there was that odd thing that happened in chapter 3 when Keiichi's planning to take out Satoko's uncle, right? Because he calls Mion and says, hey, do me a favor, take Satoko to the festival. I can't. And she freezes and she's like, I heard someone say that to me once a long time ago. And we knew that was Satoshi, but I thought that was weird because in this storyline, in this very chapter, he calls Shion because, like, he's talking to Shion, but he thinks he's talking to Mion. But Mion directed the call basically to Shion, and Shion was speaking to him and heard that request, right? And so that implies that Shion was Mion in chapter 3 of the chapter 3 story. And these notebooks are kind of confirming that Shion has this snap happen every Watanagashi. And that from Watanagashi on, Mion is just out of the picture. That Mion herself might not be as twisted as she seems. And the madness in the eyes that we see sometimes, I mean, Mion did seem to have the cold eye, so maybe she does have that madness, but I think we've been seeing Shion the whole time. And that's wild. Like, holy crap. There's evidence pointing to that was the case. The only one that might not have evidence for it is chapter 1, but again, that was the first chapter. I don't know if he was writing it at the time with the intention of that being what happened, because it was the first chapter. I don't know how well crafted the whole narrative was from the get-go or not, but it's just something to think about, right? Like, Shion might have become Mion from Watanagashi on, like, in every realm and every version. And if that's the case, that's just crazy. That's crazy, because it also kind of implies that Mion might be way more innocent of a character than she seems, like, just in general. Like, Mion might be relatively soft-hearted and might really not be the one to make all these terrible things happen. But I don't know. At the same time, we do see a lot of evidence that she's willing to condone terrible things. She was able to watch Shion have her nails pulled out, then was able to, like, and then offered up her nails at the same time. It's interesting, isn't it? Ooh, there's so much to unpack with this. What a change. This throws a lot into the air. Apparently assumptions I'd made of what was going on and who people were and where they were. I always knew there's a possibility they could be swapping more often than we thought, but I didn't realize it was going to be to this extent. I think that was the point. I think some of you sneaky buggers were hinting at it in some of the comments way back. Like, I swear I remember someone mentioning something about, like, oh yeah, like, kind of tough because you never know if they've ever been swapping or not. It's good to re-examine those types of moments. And I was thinking in just like a platitude level of like, oh yeah, you know, maybe in other chapters there's indications that it's happened. Apparently, yeah. All right. So thank you so much for joining me today. I think that's enough to chew on for now. Hope you enjoyed that. That was, that's a lot, but it was good. I'm very happy with this. So thank you so much. I appreciate all your support, by the way. The channel, like, support and the direct support is really, really nice to have. I think my battle plan tomorrow is to do a patron cast. It'll be long overdue, but all the new job stuff really threw a lot of wrenches in my life, and it became kind of tough to plan anything. But I'm going to try and start, like, reorganizing things now. I've been able to start making more time for other things, so it's time for that as well. So I hope you look forward to that. If you're a patron member, I want to shout you guys out and kind of give you some big behind-the-scenes updates. I think I owe you, especially because I want to talk about what happened with Wednesday with Aokana, and what the plan is after that, because I have that set in stone. I'm to the point where I'm willing to set it in stone and actually tell, like, what's going to happen after, just so, like, I can't go back on it. And then your support means the world to me, but heck, if you're here watching this, you're supporting me, so thank you. And until the video watching me, I'll see me in next. I'll see you there.